Hello everyone, this is April with Craft Knife Chronicles, and I'm here to share another project with you. This is a Valentine tunnel card. It's a simple little project which can be completed with a minimum amount of materials and a relatively short period of time. I used the Graphic 45 Monomore paper, and just the 6x6 pad and the journaling cards were used to complete the project. I also used some of the Sizzix paper leather on the sides to make the joining between the front and back covers, and then a couple of basic gray low profile magnets to make the magnetic closure. I'll open the magnetic closure, which is this image on the front that has been backed with chipboard. It has a couple of magnets here on the side which attach to the right side of the cover. It opens like this, and as you can see, it's very simple on the inside. Hopefully you can see that there are several layers here. The roses are on the first layer, then the couple is on the second layer, and then on the back is some background paper and a sentiment. Each of the panels is framed with a border that's just about a little over 3/8 of an inch, which was created either from the journaling card, or in the case of this first panel, I extended it to make it a little wider to come up to the 3/8 of an inch just by using some of the 6x6 paper. And then hopefully the camera will pick up this light color on the paper leather that I used here. I embossed it on my, with an embossing folder on my die cutting machine, and just inked it to give it some relief and to emphasize the pattern. On the back of the project, I added a little pocket, and then one of the little 3x4 journaling cards, or any card of your choice, can fit in there so you can write a special love note when you give the card. To display the card, you can take the two cover parts and fold them around to the back, and again use the magnets on that closure, and then it will stand up in the upright position so that you can display the card like this. If you would like to make your own Valentine tunnel card, the rest of this video shows the steps that I used to create it. Hello everyone, this is April with Craft Knife Chronicles, and today I'm going to make a simple tunnel book that can be a Valentine's Day card. I'm using the Graphic 45 Monomore collection and some of the journaling and ephemera cards. Now in this pack there's both 4x6 and 3x4 cards, and I've decided to use some of the 4x6 cards. And I've also, in the pack, there's some that come in this portrait format, and then there's some that come in the landscape format, and I'm going to make my book in the portrait format. So I've gone through the collection and selected some. This book will either have 2 panels or 3, I haven't decided yet, but I think this will be my first panel. I'll just cut out around the flowers here and leave the border. And then in my second panel, I'll get rid of this background here and just have the couple so that the roses will come down in the front here and then the couple. And then I like the idea of having a sentiment behind the couple, so I look through the cards and I think this one will work pretty well. It's a little bit big, but I think I can cut it down and it should fit behind them. but I wanted to have a little darker border, so this is one of the 3x4 cards. I think I can cut and trim this border around here so that I can use this darker border to go around the sentiment. Now that will either be stationary on the back panel or there'll be a third panel. I haven't quite decided, so I just pulled this other card out here to use for the border. So I've got some cutting to do, so I'll do that and then I'll be back. So I've done some cutting. Here I went around the flowers. There were 3 small roses that had very thin stems, so I just cut those off. And then here I went around the couple, and you can see how this is going to start to stack together there. And then behind the couple, this is the sentiment, and I think I can position it. You know, his head comes up here, but it could come into this space here, so I'm just going to try it out. And then this is the little frame I cut out from the little 3x4 card. So when I cut this sentiment out, I cut it bigger so that I would have something to attach this frame to. So what I'm going to do is just cut this off and bring the bottom up, and that will work out fine. You won't be able to see that little cut in there, I don't think. I also need to trim off here at the top. I don't know if you can see this, but there's some extra black on the short edge here that I'll cut off. And then I hope you can see this. The frame on, let me flip them over, maybe you can see it better on this other side. The frame on the second panel is a little bit wider than what's on the first panel here, and I think this will make a more substantial panel if the frame is this wide. So I think what I'll do is just take one of the pieces from the 6x6 pad and cut a frame that can come in here just a little bit wider and give some more support to this first one, and then all the panels will have this wider frame. It looks to be about 3/8 of an inch. So I'll do those 2 things and then come back. To make the frame backing for this first panel, I cut a piece of this paper from the 6x6 pad and cut it to the exact length and width of the panel. Now these cards are just slightly less than 4x6, or at least the ones in my pack were. So just cut it to the correct size. And then I've done a little prep here. I can see that what I want to do is to attach it and then do the cutting. I think that will work out better. It'll ensure that I get a nice even cut all around. But obviously I won't be able to cut behind where the roses are. So what I've done is measure up from the bottom to see how far I can come up, and that was about 3/4 of an inch. So I cut a slit here. That's 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. And then I put the card on top here and saw how far down the roses would come on this side and also on this side, and I made these preliminary cuts here. I think you can see them if I pick this up a little bit. Now the width of this, I measured the width on this second panel, and it's a 1/16 of an inch larger than 3/8. So that's what I'm going to cut when I attach this over here. Now I have this ruler, which is, I can easily see that kind of a measurement on. You have to be careful when using this kind of ruler because it doesn't have a metal edge on it, but it works all right for me. I just am careful. And so I've prepped this with some score tape here around the four sides and then at the top of this slit. So I'll go ahead and attach those two pieces together. And now that I have these pieces joined together, I'll just continue the lines I had previously cut at a 1/16 of an inch more than a 3/8 of an inch. So now I finished cutting out the center here. You can see I have some left on the frame here. I think that color is alright. And now I have both of these frames are the same size, just slightly over 3/8 of an inch. And then also I decided to do the same thing with this second panel. It didn't need to have the frame extended, but I just thought it would give it a little more sturdiness to have that extra weight of paper. And so now you can see I have some markers here. Whenever I cut an edge, I don't like to see that white edge, so I use either a black or a colored marker around those cut edges. So I'll do that, and then I have my little frame here, and I think on this piece, I think I want to see this a little design here, so I'll cut this black frame so that I can come just below that, and I'll get that prepped and then trim around the outside excuse me, of the backing here. I've decided to use the frame from this card for my back panel because I wanted to have this little reveal of black here, because I'm going to cut out the frame, and then this is the paper that I've chosen to go behind and be the back. So I think that will work out well, and also this little saying will show up well on that paper. So I'm going to cut out this frame, leaving a little reveal of black, and then put a solid piece of this paper from the 6x6 pad behind it. And that's going to be my back panel. And then to finish off the back panel, we need to see where to attach our sentiment. So I've got it temporarily stuck down with some temporary adhesive, and just lining it up with that panel in front of it. I want to see a little bit of this top black of the frame if I can. Now right here I'm covering up the in a little bit, but I think it will be okay, because remember these panels will separate a little bit, and I think you'll be able to see the in. So that's where I'm going to put mine, so just experiment with that. And then I'm just going to raise it up with some of these thin foam dots. I don't think they're more than a 1/16 of an inch thick, and put that behind there just so there's a little dimension there, since we only have a few amount of panels here. So I'll get that done, and then we'll have our panels finished and we'll be ready to start assembling. I've made a lot of tunnel books, but I still like to take time to get a piece of scrap paper and make sure I know exactly how my book is going to go together. Now here I just have a front panel, a second panel, and the back panel. So I know that if I hold it up this way, the front panel is going to go on the front of this one, and then the second panel will go on the front of this one, and then the back panel will go on the front of that one. And I like to make the back a little bit longer. So I'm going to make my pleats 3/8 of an inch. So now that I've got my little mock-up here, I can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3/8 of an inch, which is 1.5 inches. And then I think I'll make this one about 3/4 of an inch wide. So then I need a total width of 2 1/4 inches by the height of my panels, which is 6 inches. So I've cut from some of the 6-inch paper two strips that are 2 1/4 inch wide, and I'm going to make my scores. And you can go every other one, you know, from the front and the back. I don't find it makes that big of a difference, so I'm just going to do all 4 one way. But I will make sure that when I do this second one, I'll start with the 3/4 inch on the left side, so that I'll end up with mirror images. So now I'm going to get these folded and burnished and prep them with score tape, and then I'll be back. So I have my 2 hinges made, and then I've prepped my 3 panels. On the front panel and the second panel, I've just run a strip of 1/4 inch score tape on the 2 sides. And on the back panel, I had some 5/8, so I ran that. If you don't have 5/8, you could run a couple strips of 1/4 inch. So we're going to start with that back panel. We're going to do one side at a time. And I should say that I had to trim off the tops of this 6-inch paper just a little bit because my cards were slightly shorter than 6 inches. So I'm going to just balance this guy up on the edge and keep my card flat on the table and bring it in so that I get it right into that crease. And once I know it's into that crease and everything is where I want it, then I'll give it a little squeeze so that I have it like this. Let me put a piece of white card here behind it. So now I have it attached to that back pleat there, and I'll go ahead and give that a little burnish. And then we can add our second panel in. We do that the same way. We're going to remove the score tape and stand it up here, get it into that crease, and then give it a little squish. So into the crease nicely. Give it a squish, and then we can reach in here and give that a burnish as well. I think I'll wait to put the front cover on until I've got this other side on. So for this other side, we'll again remove this 5/8 inch strip of score tape backing. I kind of bring this towards the front edge of that crease, the front side of the crease, so that that score tape doesn't engage prematurely. And once I know I have it where I want it, I'll give it a little squish. Then again, open this up. Give that a burnish. Then we can bring our second panel in. Just take your time. It gets a little trickier when you've got one side attached, but what I've done there is just kind of lightly tack the bottom, and then I flipped it over. I'm going to get the other side in there, and now I can go ahead and burnish all the way down. Our tunnel is starting to come together here. And then it's just a matter of removing the score tape backing and putting the front panel on. And I'm using the very edge to line that up there, and hopefully that should keep it straight. And do the same thing on this other side. Use the very edge of the accordion. Just kind of lightly tack it down at each end first. Then you can go back and then we'll give it a good burnish there on the front. And I like to just stick my fingers in there a little bit and separate the pleats out a little bit. So there's the base of our tunnel card. We're going to add a backing and a cover next. I've brought out my green mat because I've chosen to work with some black chipboard, and it's a lot easier to see obviously on this green mat than on my big black mat. So if you don't have black chipboard, you can of course use whatever you have, and if you want to have if you have craft colored chipboard, you could ink the edges black. Since there's so much black in this card, that's what I think the black will look good. So I've also prepped, this is getting ready to add the hinges to the tunnel card, and then I've prepped the back here with some score tape so that I can attach the back like this with these two pieces exposed. So I'll go ahead and get that attached. And to determine what size of chipboard I needed, I just measured across the back here. Mine ended up being 4 inches, and then the height, which is just a hair under 6 inches for me. So now I've got this prepped, and sometimes I use for my tunnel books corrugated paper. You could use anything you want, but today I'm going to try this product that's new to me. A friend gave it to me, and it's called Paper Leather Sheets. And so what I did was I cut 2 strips that were 3 inches by 6 inches, and hopefully you can see here, I ran them through with an embossing folder. If you had hearts or something, that would be nice. This was the most kind of romantic looking embossing folder I had, and then I just used some ink. I used tattered rose on this just to highlight that embossing. So we'll see how that works, and what I'm going to do is I think I said they're 3 inches wide. They're just a little bit shy of 6 inches so that they'll fit exactly the height here. And I'm going to attach 1 inch here on the back, and then in a second I'll attach it to the front covers. So I've got my 2 hinges burnished on, and I just want to say, if you don't have 1 inch score tape, you could just draw a line 1 inch in and put a piece of score tape on either side of that, you know, up to that line. It doesn't have to be fully covered. And then I burnished very strongly where it's attached to the back, just to kind of remove as much of the embossing as possible. We'll eventually cover this with some paper, and it'll look better if it's, you know, not so bumpy. So then we're ready to attach our front covers, and the front covers are, I just took a piece of at the same size as the back, cut it in half, so these are about 2 inches wide by just shy of 6 inches tall. And when they attach on here, this is going to wrap, and so the score tape is on the outside, so that when you're on the inside it looks like this. Okay, so I'll get those two pieces attached and then I'll be back. So I have the two front covers attached. Again, I did some really strong burnishing on the part that's attached to the chipboard. I also used the grid line on my mat here to make sure that everything was staying nice and square. And so now we're ready to finish the back cover. So I'll choose some paper and then I'll be back to do that. So I've chosen some paper for my back, and it is directional, so I want to make sure that when I attach it to the back that I have the card upright, and this is the top up here and this is the top of my paper, so I'll just go ahead and get that put on. Let me just write top on it. Also, I should say that I have darkened the edge of this white where it's next to the black chipboard so that it won't be showing. And then for the front, I'm eventually going to have a magnetic closure here, so I'm going to just put paper on the left side for now. And again, this is directional, so I've kind of covered it up with tape, but I can see that this is the top here. I've also on this left side put some extra score tape here in the middle so that when that magnetic closure comes on, it will have something solid here to glue onto. So I'll get this set side put on, and then we'll be back to make some choices for our closure. I want to have a closure that is about the size of one of these 3x4 cards. Now, there's several choices here in the 3x4, but I think I'm going to look at using one of these. We could cut a frame and use this image here, and this is what I've decided to go with, is to cut a frame and use this image here on the front. So I'm going to get that image prepped and then I'll be back. So this is what I'm going to use for my closure. I've cut out the man and the woman from one of the 4x6 cards, and then I cut out a little frame, and this is a piece of paper from the 6x6 pad. So I'm just going to do something like this. And then this is a piece of black chipboard that's about 3x4. I've cut it, it's slightly larger than the frame, just so I'll have a little black reveal around the edge. So I'm going to put these layers together and then attach it to the front of this chipboard, and then I'll be back. So I have my closure, the front of it completed, the frame, the couple, the background paper, and it's attached to a piece of chipboard. And now, before we attach this to the front of our tunnel card, I want to add the magnetic closures and then finish off the part that will be seen. Now, it's important to know that this closure is going to go on the card like this. The left side is going to get attached and the right side is where the magnets are going to go. So I always like to put an M or something on this right side so that when I flip it over I remember what's going on. Also that this is the top. So in order to place our magnets, I think I'll bring them in a center line of 3/4 of an inch from that edge, and then also, let's see, yeah, I think we'll come 3/4 of an inch down from the top and 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. So hopefully you can see these lines that I've drawn. 3/4 of an inch from this side where I marked for the magnets, and then 3/4 of an inch down and 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom. So that's where our magnets are going to go. I've got both a plus and a minus of, I'm just using some really thin basic gray magnets, and so I'm going to attach my positive magnets. These have some adhesive backing on them. Sometimes it's a little tricky to get the paper off without getting the adhesive backing off, but there we go. There's one on. And I'll bring in some glue because I want to make a ring of glue around these magnets. I've also cut a piece of paper that is 2 inches wide that will go over those, and I cut it 2 inches wide so that it'd be a little bit of an overhang so that when it attaches to this front cover you won't have that raw edge. Okay, so let's put our ring of glue. You don't want to put any glue on top of the magnets. Score tape is okay, at least in my experience. I'll take this piece of pattern paper . Make sure you burnish around those magnets. And then I can just take my craft knife and trim this even. So I'll do that and then I'll be back. So now we're ready to attach our closure, and we want to first draw a line that is 1.5 inches so that we divide this panel in half, because remember it's 3 inches wide. So I'll draw a 1.5 inch line there, and then I want to put this evenly spaced from the top to the bottom, and since it's 4 inches tall and this book is 6 inches tall, we can just make a 1 inch mark at both the top and the bottom. So now we will be able to, we'll attach this with glue and score tape to the front. We can line up the 1.5 inch line here, and we can use our 1 inch marks to get it spaced correctly vertically. So I'll get that attached. So now we're ready to put our magnets on the other side, and to do that we'll take a couple of strips of spare strips of cardstock and just put them over that side with the magnets. And then here are the matching ones. And they will automatically seek and find where they need to go. The adhesive should be facing towards you, not attached to that scrap cardstock. And there they are. And so then we want to put this together. We can move this a little bit so that we can see our line. And get the two, so that the two sides of chipboard butt up against each other here in the center and are nicely aligned. And once you have that, put some pressure on the magnets so that they will stick to that side. Now make sure when you go to pick this up that you put your hands underneath this cardstock that we put in there, or pattern paper, so that the magnets will stay in place. Otherwise, those magnets are so strong that they will pick up and want to stay attached to this side over here. So now that we have our magnets in the right place, we can go ahead and put our other piece of pattern paper over here on this side. Whoops. And make sure you put a ring of glue around each of the magnets. And then I've already prepped this with some score tape, so I'll go ahead and attach that down. So there's our closure on. Now we can finish off the insides here and here. And I've got some pattern paper I chose to do that with, so I'll attach that down. And that's our completed Valentine's tunnel card. We can open it like this, and then if you want to display it in an upright position, you can fold these two to the back. That magnet will engage and it will stand up like this so that you can view it in the open position. Now something else you might want to do is on the back, you could add a pocket and use one of the other 3x4 cards or any tag of your choice and write a little message to your loved one and include that in the back of the card. I think I'll ink a little bit more. This is a little bit stark here on the sides, but other than that, there's our completed tunnel card. And here's the little pocket that I'm going to put on the back here to hold one of the 3x4 journaling cards. You can see I've just decorated it with a little punched heart and a piece of ribbon. And these cards are just a little bit shy of 3x4, so I've made my pocket. I cut it 4 inches wide so that I could make a 1/2 inch gusset on either side, and then cut it 4.5 inches long so that I could have a 1/2 inch gusset at the bottom. Now, depending on what size of a card you're going to use, you could adjust the size of the paper and then just add a 1/2 inch to each side. You can see I've trimmed off down here on a miter so that I won't have any bulk when I fold these to the back. And also I've trimmed down at an angle up here on the top so that it won't show behind this decorative edge. And I just made that decorative edge with a die that I had. Well, it's not strictly necessary, of course. And so then I'll just find the placement that I want to have for the pocket and use the score tape that I put on the gussets to attach it. And now I have the pocket attached. You of course could add some decorative element out here if you wanted to, but I think I like this just the way it is. And I did come in and highlight the embossing on this paper leather a little bit, just with some barn door, a light touch of barn door distress ink. And so then that is our finished Valentine tunnel card. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this project come together and will be encouraged to try one of them yourselves. This is April with Craft Knife Chronicles. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.